Today I'm really excited and honored to bring you a extended session with rock and metal bass legend Mr. Rudy Sarzo. Rudy has a career that just hasn't been touched in its scope by pretty much any other musician I can think of in rock and metal. For him to have started with Quiet Riot in the Randy Rhoads years, then moved with Randy into some would say the most important albums of Ozzy's career being Diary of a Madman and the Blizzard of Oz tours, to then go from there to hitting Whitesnake at the top of their career and platinum selling status, to then go on to other groups like Dio, having side projects with virtuoso guitar players like Driver with Tony McAlpine. He's been almost omnipresent for decades and is still a touring and performing musician today. It's an astounding career, and obviously one that there's an amazing amount of knowledge and experience and storytelling to be gathered from. I realized pretty quickly that when we started this, it was going to be way less of an interview and more me just curating an incredible amount of just a download of information from Rudy as seen through the eyes of his evolving gear. We're going off the template of talking about his gear, but the story surrounding it, the amazing pieces that you probably haven't heard in other interviews or other stories about his time in Ozzy, his time in Whitesnake, what was going on and influencing those things, about the recording industry, about the sound equipment and why albums sound certain ways at certain periods. Just an amazing amount of info that isn't just some kind of gear fest. Not that we would turn that down, because he's also been an amazing connoisseur of equipment and has developed a number of signature instruments that are well worth talking about on their own. So this is an extended piece. I absolutely say it's worth every minute of your time. There's things in here you're just not going to find anywhere else. So grab your favorite beverage, get a coffee, get a beer, whatever it is, sit back and just enjoy hearing some amazing information from a rock and metal legend. And help me welcome Mr. Rudy Sarzo.
So, thanks so much for coming on, Rudy. It's a real honor. I know everybody's really excited to get all the inside info from you. So, appreciate your time, man, genuinely.
Hey, Rodney, it's such a pleasure. I actually caught your review of my signature Peavey bass.
Yes.
And that's what really said, why you did an incredible job, so I feel really safe coming here and opening up a vault in my mind of how things, musicians are pretty much synonymous with the instruments that they pick to play, whether they're amplifiers, their sound.
Yeah.
So I'm open to any of your questions.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a real blast. Like I said, it's when I picked that up, I was going back and looking for, signature instruments or things that I thought had been passed over, or, maybe people had forgotten about the quality of it and stuff. And the American-made Peavey stuff, I think, has been kind of overlooked. But I had never I actually tried one of your original Washburn. And so I was so curious to see what the Peavey stuff was, and then I finally came across one, and still, that's like one of my favorite necks ever. That bass, it's that kind of slim jazz, but with enough meat to get your hand around it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, there's a story behind every single instrument that I design, or the ones that I play with, that I have not designed, but they're favorites of mine. So let me know, where do you want to start with the conversation? Because to get to the Peavey, I have to go backstory to that one. And then there's an evolution after the Peavey.
Yeah, of course. So, well, why don't we start with, let's go back to Metal Health and what you were playing then and why, and take us through what changed. And
I would love to do that. And to me, that is a portion that has a backstory to it being, let's say, how about if we start with Quiet Riot, the Randy Rhoads version?
Even better.
Okay, so when I started playing with Quiet Riot in 1978, I had owned one bass for about 10 years.
Okay.
A 1967 Fender Jazz that I bought in 1967.
Wow.
And to me, the importance of any young musician that can actually, if you can't afford a good instrument, you know what? Mow some lawns or do whatever you need to get some money, like I did. I had some jobs that I had to do that got me the money so I could actually go and purchase an instrument that will take you from your bedroom, your garage band, to the stage. Because, you know, with, let's say, Ozzy, I played that bass with Ozzy. It took me through that whole trajectory of being in my room, practicing, listening to records and playing in party bands in Florida. I only had one bass that whole time. That's all I needed. Most of the guys that I know only had one bass. That's it. You know, most musicians, we couldn't just, to have two basses or two guitars, it was like, why? And which one are you going to pick to play tonight? You know, that was the hardest choice. Which one am I bringing to the gig? No, hell, only one bass. That's all I played. And it was, but back then, if you listen to the records of the 70s, let's say, it was either a precision or a jazz. Later on, you know, when things got a little bit more electronic, we have like customized versions of those instruments. You know, it wasn't until later in the 70s where they're like custom shops in New York that started creating, you know, certain instruments for musicians that demanded a different sound, like Anthony Jackson with a 5-6 string basses and stuff like that. That was kind of like the birth of the boutique, you know, bass, you know, manufacturers or creators of these instruments. And but back in the day, it was all about walking into your local mom and pop music store and getting a Fender or you know, jazz or a precision, you know. And so that's what I play, my 67. There's plenty of photos out there on the internet with me playing with Randy Rhoads. What happened was that I was, previous to joining Quiet Riot with Randy, I have been in many bands, and one of them, after leaving Florida, my neck started to do funny things, especially up north. I guess it went from humidity to completely dry and then cold temperature. So the rosewood on my 67 was acting up. I didn't know anything about, you know, straightening the neck and adjusting it like I do now. I mean, after all these years, I had to learn how to do that myself, and you know, and just working on it, doing the intonation on the bridge and stuff like that. But back then it was like, wow, I got a problem. My bass doesn't feel the same that it used to. So one of the guitar players in the band, he happened to have at home a precision bass, and I said, listen, you know what, I prefer the rosewood. Would you mind switching next? So I said, sure, why not? So that's why in the Randy Rhoads era, Quiet Riot, and with the Ozzy era, you know, that I play in 81 and 82, my Fender 67 all of a sudden has a maple precision neck. Yeah, yeah. And so I used it with, of course, you know, with Quiet Riot with Randy, and then Randy leaves to join Ozzy, and of course I kept playing different projects, and then there's a reunion that we did in 1980 while Randy was still a member. I mean, this is between the Blizzard and the Diary of a Madman recordings. He takes a break, comes to LA, and Kevin DuBrow manages to put together a reunion gig at the Starwood, you know, and so we play. And on the last song of the last night, we were all doing kind of like, you know, making noise and you know, just like throwing things around. For some reason, I put my bass on the ground, and I started like with my foot, kind of like hitting the strings. It was the 70s, you know. And Randy throws his guitar up in the air, and it lands on the neck of my bass.
Oh.
like where the headstock meets the neck, right on the nut, and cracks it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the only instrument I have. There's no like, I can, oh, that's right, no problem, you know. So he felt really bad. So we went to Sandoval, Carl Sandoval, who at that time had already built Randy's Flying V with the polka dots.
Okay.
Right? So he puts it back together again. So that bass, there's somebody out there probably with that bass, because I don't own it anymore. So there's somebody out there that's trying to figure out, wow, what's the deal with this hairline crack? Because he did a great job. He just put it back together again. And you really have to look at it to see that there's a fracture between the headstock and the neck on the back. You can see that. And another way to tell, another way to tell that is the actual original bass is on the headstock. Before I changed the neck, the guitar player that originally owned it, he comes from a family that his father was a minister, so he had one of those Christian fish carved into the back of it.
Now, you know, everybody who's got a bass now is out there looking for this thing.
67 jazz bass, yeah. Which is actually the bass that's on the cover of the Quiet Riot 2 album. And subsequently, I played that with Ozzy later on. It's in, if you see me play with Quiet Riot with Randy, that's the bass that I'm talking about. You know, so that was the, so going back, so let's say, so we fast forward, and that gig was the last, you know, then the neck breaks, and Randy has it fixed. He goes back out on the road again with Ozzy. And the next time I talked to Randy was because they were looking for a bass player. This is about a few months later, maybe 6-7 months later. They had just finished recording Diary of a Madman. They were getting ready to go on the road to do the Blizzard of Oz tour in the United States. So they only had like 10 days to find a bass player. Tommy Aldrich already was hired.
Wow.
And so I go and I audition. I mean, there's another story to that, but we're just talking instruments here. Yeah. I wrote a book about this whole time. So if there's other information that everybody wants to know about, it's only my book, Off the Rails. But anyway, going back to the book,
definitely.
So going back to the basses, so I get the gig with Ozzy, thanks to Randy, you know, recommending me. And Sharon goes, "Where's your equipment?" I said, "I have this bass here." And she said, "You can't go on the road with just one bass. You got to get another bass." So she sends me across the street. There was a store in LA in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, called Nadine's. And somebody talked about it a couple of weeks ago on social media, and I go, "Wow, I'm so glad to know that store is still open." So anyways, I went to Nadine's across the street from where we were rehearsing at, and there was a Music Man hanging on the wall, Sabre.
Mm-hmm.
And my bass already had a preamp put in. Whatever, there was only like one or two available back in the late 70s, early 80s, at least late 70s when I did the customization to it. And I mean, I did it myself, so I really couldn't carve into the body. I just put it in, and the volume knob where the preamp was just stuck out a little bit further up. Then, you know, it wasn't level, you know, I did it myself anyways. So I needed a bass that had a preamp, just like the Fender that I customized. Oh, I also customized it with a badass bridge, because that was the thing to do back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as badass bridge came in, we got to put this in there, you know.
You were a pro if you had one. That's
right. That's why I've kept my 59 with the original bridge. That's it. That's it, baby. Real Fender. Yeah. But okay, so going back to that. So now I got two basses. I have the Fender Jazz with the precision neck, and I have this Sabre, and the Sabre for some reason, really sat well, because it's an instrument that it was built from the ground up to be active.
Mm-hmm.
The Fender Jazz was built to be passive, which is one thing that I found through the years. If you really wanted to sound like a Fender,
Mm-hmm.
keep it passive, because one of the things that it does, as you already know, is that once you add a preamp to the circuitry of a Fender Jazz, if it has a passive active switch, once you go passive, it bypasses the tone control.
Mm-hmm.
I hear it. I hear the difference.
Yeah,
I have a Marcus Miller, actually the last one to leave the factory, Fender factory. That's another story. But but every time I go from active to passive, it just doesn't sound right. Active, it sounds like Marcus Miller bass. It has that slinky, really great, what I consider an urban jazzy tone to it. Not necessarily a Fender Jazz, but a tone all to itself. It sounds very unique. But once I decide, okay, I want to see what it sounds like passive, it just doesn't sound like as good as my other Fender. It sounds flat, really. It doesn't sound like it's going through the proper circuitry, because it bypasses the tone control. Okay, so now comes time to record. Actually, it was a radio broadcast. The first broadcast that we did, I believe it was either King Biscuit or Westwood One. It was from Cleveland. There were many bootlegs, and it's available on YouTube. It was dubbed Bathead Soup, but it was it was Bathead Soup, and that was 1981, like 2 weeks into the tour. And for that broadcast, that's what I use. For the E-flat tuning songs, I used the Fender. And for the rest of the show, which was tuned to E, okay, the E-flat tuning being that most of, I would say, except for one song, SATO,
Right.
Diary of a Madman is an E-flat tuning.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is, but Blizzard of Oz is, Blizzard of Oz is all regular, a standard tuning.
Got it.
Right? Okay, A440. Okay. So for those songs, the Blizzard songs, I played the Music Man. And for the Diary of a Madman songs, which was Believer and Flying High Again, I played the Fender Jazz. So when it came time to do the broadcast, we were just playing the same instruments. It was just another show for us. Everything. One of the things that a lot of musicians today don't take into consideration when they listen to broadcasts of bands from the 70s, live shows, when I mean broadcast, a live show, is that most of the headliners at the time were using a Schaefer Vega wireless system.
Okay.
With a very interesting limiter built in. You could turn it down, but even if you turn it down, you still would get the limiter. It's part of the circuitry. There's a company called Solo Dallas that actually it's a reproduction of the circuitry. Just not the wireless. It's not a wireless anymore, because what happened is within a couple of years, like I was using 3 of those, and by 1983, 84, those frequencies became illegal by the FCC, because you know how it is with wireless system. They keep going into certain
ranges.
The ranges, yeah, and they start giving those to to the telephone companies, or Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all of that. So we get screwed in that. So now it's, if you look at any transmitter, it's like 165.007 to scan it, and it's a very narrow frequency, but somehow they make it work. But anyways, a lot of the sound that you're going to hear every time you hear from those records It has to do with the compression that the instruments are getting from the wireless system.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, this is a gold mine of info here. That's something I've never heard before. That was
No, I mean, I want to grab you by the hand and take you back to how it was, back then. Front of the house engineers, and they still do. They still want to be able to control the sound. And I was brand new, so which meant I wasn't going to argue with the sound guy. I just joined the band. It's like, okay, just keep my mouth shut and just play, and listen and learn, So my rig was just out of the wireless system into the head, SVT head with 810s. We had 3 of those. If somebody got louder or the side fills were too loud, I didn't turn them down because the side fills were loud, so they could reach the center of the stage, which where Ozzy was standing. So I can't turn that down because he's not going to be able to hear it, So I had to compete. And sometimes, like when we started playing with the castle, we had the castle stage.
Yeah.
Our backline was behind the castle walls. And what happened was it was a huge throw from where we were standing to the back of the castle. So in my case, I had three Ampeg rigs, SVTs, A10 cabs behind the castle, and then in front of me, I had wedges with 15s, double 15s in each wedge, and it was miking my backline, so it was the same tone that I was getting from my backline that I was playing to, coming out of the wedges, and it was aligned, time aligned, so there would be no echo. You know what I mean? These guys, they know how to do it. They're pros. The company we're using at the time was called Tasco. They were from England, which actually working with English crew. They had different ears than the American sound companies. A lot of had to do with 220 versus 110. A Marshall amplifier will sound different in the UK than it does in the United States. Yeah, gear sounds completely different, because you're dealing with cycles, you're dealing with volts, you're dealing with, wattage, everything. It's just like, it's a whole, there's more saturation in Europe than happens here in the United States. So these guys, what they did is whatever saturation was missing, they will dial it in somehow. They will overdrive at some point in your signal to get that sound, because that's home. They understand that. A clean sound, it doesn't rock. Yeah. Whether you're in the studio or whether you are live, that's the way that they hear things. Yeah.
That's a lost art then.
It is. But a lot of what we hear, the sounds through history, are due to environment. I mean the environment of the music and the culture and society. Is just a reflection. It's an echo. Things happen culturally or socially. Certain actions occur, and when you hear the music, it's an echo of what just happened. It's a reflection, musically. Whether it's in the 60s anti-war songs, some of the best music came out of that movement. There was a meaning, there was a passion, there was something to be said about what we're going through, and art, whether it's through the visual arts or auditory arts like music. It's a way to express yourself as a society. So, so we're talking about basses here now. One of the things that 40 years ago, we only basically sensibly, and I mean sensibly because I have to go on the road and I have to be able to get strings as we travel. And, you have to be consistent with your sound, your tone, the tension on the instrument had to be maintained, from show to show. So I found that roto sounds were the most consistent. You could get them anywhere. They were very consistent. Every time you change a set of strings, great. Also, I got into the art of boiling strings.
Yes.
I've been a boiler for over 40 years.
Yes.
Carry my little burner, my little pan, because it's just a matter to me that once you break in that set of strings, and we used to sweat a lot. We used to play a lot of notes with Ozzy. It's a lot of sweating going on, you know. And before you knew it, my strings were dead. I couldn't pick up the bass the next day and play the same set. So I would just basically take them off, wrap them up, and then at the end of the week, probably on Sundays, I will have my boiling session, which means I'll get to after sound check. I stay at the gig, go in my dressing room, and heat up the little burner and boil the water and start putting strings in there, get them all out. By then, I'll have like, you know, maybe 12, 14 sets ready to boil. And then I'll put them away. And then I have a reserve for boiled strings. And those were my favorite. Just the ones that were already broken in and supple and and then they didn't have that gliss.
That's right.
Back in 1981, we started using these the PA system that we were using, especially in theaters, and even in the arenas was the Martin bins. Martin bins, they were popularized in England. They were made specifically for a lot of the gigs were audience. Birmingham has one. So they're basically theaters. And what you do is you put these bins in the orchestra pit. And that's your bass sound, your bottom. And then you separate them with other side fills and horns. But what happened with the Martin bins was that it was a crossover points at 3 points, treble, mids, and lows. And the treble, the horns travel at it faster than the low end. So with an instrument like the Sabre, that was a high output treble tone to it. It was very fretty, a lot of fret noise. So I had to like compensate that with EQ. And what I would do is I would take the Schaefer Vega that had enough of a range so I could actually go to the front of the house and talk to the engineer and dial in the tone with him. So I knew exactly what I was going to sound outside, you know, in the audience. And then I will, you know, conform to that on stage, you know. And so by the time the following tour, I added another bass. This time was a fretless maple body, maple neck with no fret marks, just fretless, right? You can actually see me, watch me play that on YouTube. It's not the Speak of the Devil Ozzy re-recordings of Black Sabbath song. It's called Speak of the Devil, but it's the Diary of a Madman tour that was broadcast for the first time on MTV 1983 Halloween night. Oh, but wow. It's available. It's available. It's Diary of a Madman, but unfortunately without Randy Rhoads, you know. And so you can watch me play this fretless because I used that on the D-tune to E-flat songs, which were 3 songs now. We added one more from Diary. We added Over the Mountain.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, I'll tell you a little story, which I took it as a compliment. We were like 2 or 3 months into the tour. And one night, Ozzy gets close to me as I'm playing that song, Over the Mountain. And he goes, your bass doesn't have any bloody frets. He just noticed it.
But all this time, he has out. That's hilarious.
So I kept playing that. And, you know, Randy passes away, and I get a call from Kevin. This is like around September of 1982 to come in and record a song called Thunderbird for a possible record that he was doing. Now, a little backstory. There's a missing link. Well, it's not missing anymore because people are beginning to talk about it, between the Randy Rhoads version of Quiet Riot and the Mental Health version of Quiet Riot. There's a band called Dubrow that is basically Kevin kept it going in a very hostile rock and roll, the type of band that we were, environment in the record industry in Los Angeles. There was really, we were almost hopeless, but that's all we knew how to do, play rock and roll. We couldn't be new wave. We couldn't be a punk band because we don't know how to do that. That's not us, but everybody kept going. And Dubrow was that band, one of those bands, and so I was living with Kevin right before I joined Ozzy. I was playing with him in Dubrow for a while. And one of the songs that we played was Thunderbird. So I knew the song. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, I'll just come down and, play with you guys. Now, what happened was that I was still a member of Ozzy when I went in the studio to record that one song. Okay. And so my gear was on the road. As a matter of fact, about 2 or 3 days after I did that session with Quiet Riot, I flew out to New York to record the Speak of the Devil Black Sabbath re-recordings, live at the Ritz with Ozzy. So I would always keep with me a practice bass. So what I had with me, which is what you hear on Thunderbird and half of my bass tracks on Mental Health, I played, except for the 2 songs, Don't Want to Let You Go and Mental Health. Those were recorded by Chuck Wright. The other ones I recorded. So half of those, Thunderbird, Slick Black Cadillac, Let's Get Crazy, and one more. Those were done with a Roland GR33 bass. The synthesizer,
the synth bass,
the synth bass. Okay, because when I heard, I used to play Thunderbird, and then when I got the call from Kevin, there was a certain bass sound that I heard on a Gino Vanelli record. I think it's Brother to Brother album. Okay. It's called Sally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and it's like a chorusing bass tone. And I say, for Thunderbird, that's what I want to get. So I brought the bass just for one song. Mm-hmm. Well, that's all I had. Anyways, I know the choice to bring another bass. So, I played around. I got in my hotel room, because I was staying in one of those extended stays places in the Hollywood Hills. It's called the Oakwood, in case anybody's listening. Okay.
Remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, the Oakwood. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, Oakwood Apartments, So I have my headphones. They were like big cans. 40 years ago, everything was bigger, And I'm dialing in the tone, so I knew exactly. Because are you familiar with the Roland synth back then?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were knobs. There was nothing that you could lock a tone. Uh-huh. Yeah. Plus when it heated up, because it happened to me later on stage when I started using it with Quiet Riot, the oscillators would go crazy from the heat. You're playing on stage and it gets hot, the oscillators are going out of tune completely. So I actually had a tuner, a pedal, on because the synthesizer module was supposed to be on the floor like a pedal. But I put it on a snare stand, so it would be higher. So I just touch it instead of because I had to retune it. Right. Okay, here comes the song. Okay, I'm going to play the synth. Right. Well, Kevin is talking. I'm retuning the bass. With my little tuner. Yeah, it was an effort that we made. So we cut Thunderbird, and the guys go, the producer and Frankie and Kevin and Carlos, they go, hey, do you remember Slick Black Cadillac? because there was extra time. It took us like a couple of takes. Okay, done. Okay, next one. Well, we got 3 hours left in the session. You remember Slick by Cadillac? Yeah. Okay. That's another song. That was the only song that would left over from the Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot era that wound up on Metal Hell. Kevin wrote that. Okay. So it was like, that's his song, you know. Mm-hmm. So again, that would have been a song that would have loved a grittier tone on it, more aggressive. Mm-hmm. But I only had this. A Roland bass synthesizer. Fortunately, it had this, you could go out direct. You could use the bass as a regular bass guitar with one pickup. Mm-hmm. You could bypass.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the synthesizer module, which is what I did for the rest of the tracking. But then again, it was not. It didn't have the grit that I had with the other basses with Ozzy. Mm-hmm. You know, like the Fender or the Music Man or anything like that. You know, and so we cut it. But then again, those were basically treated as demos until the band gets signed. Then those demos are actually, well, this was going on the record. Because even though we got signed, the powers that be really did not believe that that band, that style of music was the future, which nobody knows the future until it happens. You know? Yeah. And then it's too late. It's either now or yesterday. Yeah. You know?
It's a great testament too. I talk a lot of times about, like, you never know what's going to happen with something, so always do the best you can with it. Like, I record direct my bass lines all the time because you never know. Sometimes you just capture something, and that's
absolutely
used. So it's like with you, it's like you do this demo thinking it's just going to be this thing, and it winds up in the end. So
yeah, and
you never know.
And the further you get along on your musical journey, the more of a legacy that you start collecting, you know, for having played with others, being part of these successful things, the more important that becomes, because it just takes one misstep to have the dominoes tumble and flatten out your legacy completely. So you have to tread very carefully and be always conscious of that, you know, of what you're about to do. So anyway, so that's what happened with those records. Then with Mental Health, okay, that was like 4 songs. I came back and I recorded on a couple of more, definitely Common Field the Noise and definitely Breathless. And I think one more. So, you know, there's like 10 songs on the record. 2 by Chuck and the rest by me. So, but anyways, going back and then do a little walk over to the next week. I'm recording with Ozzy, Speak of the Devil. Mm-hmm. And that was another interesting set of circumstances because now we're doing a live recording, and Sharon made it very clear to everybody in the band that there were not going to be any overdubs. Mm. Yeah, she said it very charmingly. He said, boys, make sure you play really nice tonight because there's no overdubs. Okay. That's the way she, you know, she was, you know. So, and so I took it more as a studio session. It was at the Ritz, a club. Mm-hmm. And since we were not really familiar with the music enough, I mean, we had like 5 days worth of rehearsals to learn the whole record, except for the 3 songs that we already would play with Ozzy live, mm-hmm. which were Children of the Grave, Iron Man going into Children of the Grave medley, and then come back with Paranoid. And I'll tell you a little story after that. Okay. When I tell you, okay. So I was just listening to it today, Speak of the Devil, because I like the energy of it. But I'm listening to my bass tone. And at that time, I had just received from Washburn, I think it's called a B40.
Yes.
It was the black one.
Uh-huh.
And But it's funny because when you're a starving musician, nobody cares about you. But as soon as you start becoming somebody that they think can be an influencer to other musicians, hey, Rudy Sarzo plays this bass. Rudy Ozzy Osbourne's Rudy Sarzo plays. Let's be realistic here. Okay. So now, there's companies, and as a former starving musician, just a few months before, I was very appreciative. And I said, well, if you can make this Washburn, which later on I learned most of the Washburns at that time were made out of particle material.
Really?
Particle board. Yeah, I know. And which has a sound.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
It has its own sound. Okay. But I'm talking about 40 years ago.
Sure.
And that was a really learning period with me. So what happens is the rep, which actually was Greg Bennett. Did you ever hear of Greg Bennett guitars? Yeah, Greg Bennett was working with Washburn at the time. Then he moved on to Samick. He became like the main guy at Samick. So, but this is 82. So I go to Greg and I say, listen, I would love to play this Washburn because it actually felt really good. The neck, the body. I said, yeah, this is a really good instrument. A lot of paint, so you really cannot see the fact that it was particle board, but for what it was, this feels good. And naturally, it had a certain tone to it, a mid-range tone that I was trying to get, because here I am, I'm playing mostly 70s material with a modern bass sound, which is the Music Man. And somehow I was like, I grew up with the 70s sound. I know what Geezer Butler and these, all the bass players from the 70s sound like. Rock bass players. They don't sound like a Music Man.
Yeah, I get you.
So acoustically, I could hear that tone coming out of the Washburn. And so Greg says, let me do something. And 2 weeks later, he comes back with the same bass, but now he had taken it to Stars Guitars in San Francisco. And what they did is, in order to match the high A pickups on the Music Man, they contacted Bill Bartolini, who was the guy who designed those pickups and made those pickups. So he made Bartolini pickups specifically to match the high A with the preamp. And it was like, he gave it to me and I went, now we're talking, yeah. So I started using that bass almost instantly, as soon as I got it. But anyways, it was used on the Speak of the Devil. That's mostly that sound on Speak of the Devil. It's a mid-range active tone, but without the ultra highs that the Music Man has. So it really, I felt comfortable. Sometimes you're not getting the right tone, and no matter how well the song, is like, each note is like, ouch, ouch, ouch. Ouch,
yeah.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. It just doesn't sound right, But with this one, I could okay, I'm digging. I'm getting in a groove here. I hear what in my head sounds like the correct EQ, the tone, where it sits, where the way that it sat with Brett Gillis's guitar, everything, the drums. So it was really good. Okay, so I used that one. And then once I officially left Ozzy after that recording, within a few days, I went back in the studio and Pasha for the Quiet Riot Mental Health, and I finished the record. And for the rest of the record, I believe definitely Come On Feel the Noise. I'm playing that bass. You can hear a difference in tones. You can even hear, of course, with Chuck Wright, his tone is different from mine, and all of that. So, and Breathless, that's another one that I used it on. So that's all the way up to Mental Health. And then when I went on tour, I actually started playing the synthesizer bass a lot. Oh, a side note.
Okay.
One day while I was doing probably for Breathless, what happened was my equipment got shipped to LA, and it went in the studio, right? And I went to open up the case, and my Music Man was gone. My Saber. So my Saber went bye-bye, disappeared. I know my markings on that instrument. If I ever run across from it, because I used to wear these studded wristbands with Ozzy. And every time I would bang on the bass, on the horn, it made indentations. So I know what it looks like.
Now, is that the same one? If I remember correctly, there was a live, it looked like a studio live video.
Yes, Rochester, New York.
Yeah, I think it was like After Hours, I think it was called, or something. And I think it was like a red Saber, was it?
Black.
Black. Okay.
I'm wearing a red suit. It's a well, actually, it's just pants and Danskin. Danskin is the company that makes ballet dancing. You know, this is 1981. I went out shopping for clothes. All I could find was like, you know, clothes designed by the Sex Pistols, you know, punk clothing. I can't show up to a metal gig wearing punk clothing. So I'd be a ballerino. That's even cooler. Okay. So before I move on, do you have any questions regarding the instruments in that era?
Yeah, no, all the way through this, are you using pretty much straight through the Ampeg heads and 810s?
That's an interesting question. Okay, for some reason, you know, for a while, I was a professional tone chaser. Tone. So, and one of the things that I gravitated to when I was playing with Ozzy was that Tasco, that sound company that I was telling you about, the English sound. I needed to recreate that tone, and I wasn't getting it with the companies that I was working with in the United States. You know, especially at the level of, because we did a lot of openings, so we had no control who the sound company we were going to use. And some companies, a lot of the companies use American, except for maybe, I would say, Black Sabbath that we tour with, and I would say also Iron Maiden. The rest of the companies were, you know, the bands used domestic companies, which logistically, it made sense. Instead of bringing the equipment from Europe, they would just use local sound companies.
Sure.
And somehow I found that my bass just I wasn't getting the tone on stage that I was getting with Ozzy. So I thought, this is genius, right? I thought, what about if I create my own PA system? Because that's what I was missing, that full range tone, you know, a PA. So basically I recreated behind me, it was called Diamond Sound with Crown 300 power amps and an Alembic preamp to run everything. That was my mini PA system, you know.
That's amazing.
And
So you were early on the bi-amping then. You were like game.
Tone chasing, because, you know, one of the things that once I started recording, even though at a demo level in Los Angeles, at places like Cherokee and Record Plant, was quality, tonal quality that comes from what they call the upstairs speakers. Put it upstairs, you know, not on the near field, and then all of a sudden, you know, anything sounds great. I mean, the worst mixes in the world sound great up there. You know, it was like, wow, pushing all this vibration and frequencies against your body, and everything comes together because, you know, all those rooms are designed so acoustically perfect that the highs and the mids and the lows, they'll travel at the same speed, and it hits your body at the same time. You know, it's fantastic. So I was trying to recreate that on stage, that emotional aspect. I say, it's gonna be possible. Why not? So I went in search of that. And eventually, and here's my shift, right? Here's my shift.
Mhm.
So I was using this diamond sound, and and I'm going like, I don't know. I don't know. I think this experiment, at some point you gotta say, okay, experiment has failed. You gotta move on to something else, right? Okay. So me being a fan of John Entwistle, I contacted Sun.
Okay.
Sun, because now Quiet Riot is picking up steam, and we're #1, and we're beginning to we're getting ready to go to England and open up for Judas Priest. And I said, since we're going to be in England and it's going to be rental gear, I might as well get what I want.
Mhm.
I want to get me some of that John Entwistle sound. This is what I'm looking for with this band, Quiet Riot. If you look at it, we're kind of whooish. You got Frankie playing all the stuff, and you got Carlos, with the big chords,
Mhm.
And Kevin with the wailing, like high power, and say, yeah, I love it. And I think an Entwistle tone right here would fit perfectly, So I lined it up with the rep to use Eel Pie's rental John Entwistle rig. Eel Pie is the company.
Mhm.
They had Eel Pie Studios that were based out of Shepperton in
Okay.
England, the UK. Okay. This is 1982, 83 right now. Yeah, 83, yeah. But on the way there, and the way to England, we stopped in Puerto Rico to do a one-off, in some arena, the Roberto Clemente Arena, the baseball player,
Mhm.
Roberto Clemente.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And as a matter of fact, a little unknown band, Blackjack, with Bruce Kulick, Sandy Gennaro, Jimmy Haslip,
Oh yeah.
and Michael Bolton opened up for us. He was in a metal band. He was a metal singer back then.
I think it's almost harder for me to think of Jimmy Haslip with playing that type
metal. Oh yeah, yeah. And so they opened up for us, and so I told it was a one-off. I'm going like, what can I get here? I told, this is 40 almost 40 years ago. So I told my bass tech, listen, get me anything you can find in the island and bass rig and put it on stage. So what he did is this. He was very smart. He wanted me to be in my comfort zone. So he recreated my Diamond Sound Triumph configuration with Peavey.
Okay.
So he got me 2 15 cabs and 10s, maybe a couple of 12s. Again, a big wall of speakers, right? CS 800s.
Uh-huh.
And the PV mixer as the instead of the Olympic preamp,
Mhm.
a PV mixer, and everything was on a case, a roller case on the side of the stage. I walk in and look at it and go, PV, I go, okay, whatever. I plug in, and I was blown away completely. It was like, that's the sound right there. It was unbelievable. Okay, so we finished the gig. We carry on. We move on to England,
Mhm.
and it was one of those things that we're opening up for Judas Priest. We're doing the same set we have been doing for over a year now. No need for rehearsals. No need for sound check. Just go. And there's the Sons, 2. Actually, and the guy goes, yeah, these are actually from Entwistle's collection. He plays these.
Oh wow.
And I went, great. Yeah, I didn't take into consideration that they will also be burned out by John Entwistle. Those things. But when I first got him, I went to, because, it was like a stack. And it had two caps on the bottom, 2 caps on top, and then 4 heads, 2 stacked on top of each other as spares, right?
Insane.
All of them, every single knob was turned to 11. Every single one of them. So that should have given me a clue of what to expect. And so I plug in first song. It was like, the thing just goes out, and I go, wow, that's weird. Okay, so there's pandemonium. My bass tech is running around behind the stack, trying to plug in my other head. Okay, now we're working. Okay, it's running. It's same thing. So I'm running out of heads here. So I start banging on the heads, and that was the only way to keep playing. Just bang on the head. Once the head goes out, bang on it. It comes right back on, and just keep playing.
And that's how a Quiet Riot song title happens.
bang your amp. Yeah. Bang your head. That's it. So, and this is really no reflection on Sun amplifiers in general. This is just, this is something to be learned about backline companies. Diverse brands. If it doesn't matter if it's an Ampeg or if it's an Acoustic or a Fender brand. If the backline company does not take care of the equipment, there's going to be failure. I'm pretty sure that gear, if the Who were getting ready to go on the road, then it will go to the technician shop, make sure that everything is working for John and Whistle, because this John and Whistle, as far as I know, has never had any problems on stage with any sort of gear, because it's maintained by the crew. Yeah. But this guy here, what the hell? Just another backline rental, for them. And so when I came back to the States, because we went from opening to like the next day headlining, I contacted Peavey, and I went over to Meridian, Mississippi. And that's when I started my relationship with Peavey Electronics. I started playing. I got that big, I don't know if you've ever seen the photo, it's like a big wall of Peavey. And I used, back in the day, if it was on stage, every amp was on.
Wow. Because I remember the ad and guitar, I think I used to see all the time with you with the huge Peavey back wall. And
that's the one.
And that's on all the time.
That's the one. Oh, since you mentioned that during that photo session, because photo sessions, you want to do something a little not, outside of the box. So yes, I started playing an 8-string Washburn bass during the 8-string replaced my synthesizer, because how I stopped playing the synthesizer, and I think this is God's work. Because it was just, at one point, it was just making farm noises. You walk into a farm, you hear all these assorted animals. Yeah. Because the oscillators would just like freak out from the heat, And so we're bringing the equipment in to an arena, and that system had this huge cable. It was like a telephone cable under the ocean, transatlantic cable or something. It was like this thick with like this. I think I don't even know what it's called. It's like this thing that plugs in. It looks like nuclear. It's in your guitar. But what happened was a tech left it because it was really cold bringing the equipment in, and he just wanted to go and get in the heat. So he left my cable right underneath the gate where the gate would close, and it was double guillotine. The gate came down, to close the back of the arena, and it just split that into like two pieces, twice on each end. It's like a pretzel, and there was no way of putting that sucker back because it's like 40 cables, 40 little wires, Yeah. And back then, to find another one, we're in the middle of touring on the road. I said, you know what? For these songs that I would use the synthesizer, I started using the 8-string bass. Love's a Bitch is one of them that I use the on stage, the 8-string bass. By then, we had I was using Pearl, the company Pearl. In 1983, they had a line, 83, 84, a line of pedals. Pearl, they're known for drums.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have pedals. So I had like they sent me everything with a little pedal floor mounted thing, so I could line them up. And the flanging was just amazing, really wide, thick. Now you have to remember, were you around in the 80s playing?
No, what that was a little before me.
Yeah, you look younger than that. So I'm just making sure. So in the 80s, it wasn't until like late 80s that certain companies started saying, hey, bass players, maybe they would be interested in using some kind of effects.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until then, it was basically you had to rely on guitar effects to plug the bass into, and you start losing certain low end. And that was at the time where low end was imperative for any rock record. And I'll tell you why. I mean, let me rephrase that. If you wanted a rock record that had a top 40 potential, you were competing now with the Oberheim synthesizer basses and every other company that had a bass. But the Oberheim was like the flavor of the day at that time, So what happens is on the playlist on radio, you have to follow one song with the other. So the last thing you wanted to do is to have your rock record sound tiny compared to some techno pop record by the Thompson Twins or something like that, So it was like, okay, now we have to like, not only are you competing with other musicians in your genre, you're competing with everybody. Even basses that are not really bass guitars, they're actually bass keyboards. Oh boy, okay, so what are you going to do? So, you start thinking, how can I remedy this? Because it will be cases where the record company will be in the studio during the mix and request certain changes because they have to sell this. They have to take this to the promo guy, the let's say the artist relation guy, right? Yeah. Who is in charge of the creation of the record. He's done with the record, goes to the company and say, okay, then company meeting, staff meeting. Now you got to play that one big song that's going to make everybody in the record company go, Christmas bonus, yay! You have to take all of that into consideration, or the radio promo guy that's going to go, oh my, how am I going to sell this? How many TVs do I have to give the station manager to get the song played on the radio? Which is really came down to that, So it was like, okay, so many things came into consideration at that point because now you got MTV, and it's not like the 70s where you have FM, you got AM, airplay, you got top 40, of course, and then you got, you have a record like, let's say, Peter Frampton Comes Alive. Got a lot of FM airplay before it became the top 40, on top 40 radio, which means that the song got edited. Led Zeppelin, you got FM airplay of the whole track with Whole Lotta Love, and then you get the single version on top 40, And what happened was with MTV, those bands that were going gold was an incredible standard. Very few bands in rock and roll reached platinum. So what happened was with MTV, then we started going into like stupid record sale era. When Quiet Riot, Metal Health became the first debut by a metal record to go to number one on Billboard, it had to sell 1 million a week. We had to like bump off Synchronicity by the Police. But right behind it was Thriller. Thriller was going in and out. Thriller kept going back to the number one spot according to the next video. Every time he released a video, it would go back up to number one. Stay there for a while, slide a little bit back, then go back up to number one. I think there were like 6 videos out of that record. Some crazy amount like that. The most I've ever had was like 4 videos out of a record. That was with Whitesnake.
Gotcha.
And okay, so do you have any questions so far up until I haven't joined Whitesnake yet?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No.
No, that's all right. So at this point, you've got the 8 string. Are has the other Washburn, has that kind of become part of your stable now? Like you're playing it more frequently?
The B40, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that became my main bass during the Quiet Riot mental health tour. Then comes the next offer from Washburn, because now it's not just Rudy from Ozzy Osbourne's Rudy Sarzo. Now it's Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot. I got the same billing as the band did because I'm a band member. And so did Carlos. Carlos had he was playing some Washburn guitars then.
Mm-hmm.
But so I again contacted my friends at Washburn, and they said, "What do you think of the signature model?" And I went, I don't think that's for a musician. If you're a fan, like let's say you are a fan, I know you're a fan because you have this channel and you talk about instruments and you're passionate about it, right? So me too. I'm very passionate about instruments. I respect them. I use them. I cast my instruments according to the project or the track that I'm doing. They're like people. Mm-hmm. They have personalities. Mm-hmm. And so when he asked me to do that, I was like, wow. And then again, you're faced with what do we need another Fender? Do we need another Gibson? Do we need another Rickenbacker? No. Mm-hmm. We need something different. It's the 80s. And it's also my first design. So my first design became something that it was very personal. Kind of like if I was going to compare it, let's say John Entwistle's buzzard bass, right? Mm-hmm. With all due respect to John, who is my hero. Mm-hmm. How many wedding bands have you ever seen playing a buzzard bass? How many wedding bands have you seen playing my signature Washburn bass? So this
maybe a few. Maybe a few.
Please send in your photos. Okay. if you're in a wedding band and you're playing one of my crazy ass basses from Washburn, please, I want to see it. It's not that I'm not proud of it. It's just that I learned a lot from that bass. I mean, I learned a lot about manufacturing. That in the case of the one that I play, which was still built with particle board, because I found this later. In Korea, see, when I went to the Washburn headquarters in Chicago, I was green. This is 40 years ago. So I thought, oh, they must make the basses in the warehouse back here, right? I didn't know anything about them making the basses in Korea at a time 40 years ago with Korean. It was kind of like it was at the same OEM level as, let's say, I don't know, maybe not even Indonesia, because I've seen some instruments manufactured in Indonesia. They were incredible. But what I'm getting at with Korea and any of these countries where rock and roll is not part of your culture, it's very hard to find people that when they go through the assembly line, they know if there's a problem with the instrument, which is if you go to Corona, to the Fender factory, you're going to experience that. These are people that play the instruments in the United States, which is part of the American culture, right? Fender was one of the companies that supplied all these musicians to create the soundtrack of our lives, Sure. It's a brand that we've gone to respect and to honor all these decades. Same thing with Gibson. You go to Gibson in Nashville, everybody is a player.
Yeah.
You go to any of these countries that rock and roll is not part of their culture. One day they're making toasters. The next day they're making guitars. It's all the same to them.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you a quantum leap into about a decade later. I know. I'll save that for later because it's part of the flow. Anyway, so they again they build this bass that you've seen photos of me playing, the black and white stripes. I'll never forget. I'm in a hotel room with a like an artist's board, you know, like paper that I could roll and put it in a tube and send it over as the design to Washburn of make me this. So I'm here on a desk in one of the hotel rooms with a Sharpie, kind of like drawing it by hand, basically. Yeah, this shape, I like this shape. Yeah. Well, see, yeah, it's pretty different. It's really cool. Okay, can you guys make a bass out of this shape? And they go, yep, no problem. And what do you want to call it? Well, you know, the slammer. Make it a slammer. Put a little target on the horn because that's what you hit it. You know, stuff like that, right? So they have this bass built, and again they send it over to Stars Guitars in San Francisco, and now Bill, because I'm promoting Bartolini pickups. People want to know, hey, what are you playing? Oh, I play these Bartolini pickups, which I love. I think it's tremendous. Not only a pickup, but a preamp. It's a whole combination, you know. And I'm going to mention this because I don't think I'm going to go this far forward. But currently, I'm using Fishman Fluence pickups because it's a complete system. And if you're going to have a signature model, you want to have consistency in what is built. So exactly what you play on stage in the studio is what somebody can purchase.
Got it.
You know, it's not like, because prior to that, I was using an incredible pickup company, Sims pickups, with the quad pickups. But the difference is that Sims did not make a proprietary preamp because they consider themselves also a passive pickup.
Okay.
But you know, with Spectres, it's about that preamp active tone, synonymous with Spectre. So there was always kind of like some of my signature basses with the Sims pickups had different preamps. Once Spectre purchased them, once Chord purchased Spectre, they started installing another type of preamp into it. So there was a variety of tones. And I'm going like, okay, well, you know, okay. Until I came across the Fluence pickups, which is the matching set. Pickups, preamp, you know. So anyway, so I just wanted to go. So by going back to Bartolini.
Okay.
And at that, so this is Bartolini. And so he built me the electronics and the pickups, hand wired with black and white checker pattern pickups to match the black and white stripes, you know. And it sounded really good, but there was always a hollow mid-range tone, mostly having to do with the nature of how the bass was built. It was a bolt-on.
Okay.
And it just didn't have enough frequencies going through the body to grab the whole, you know, to get that mid-range that you get from the whole body being coupled, you know. Plus it's particle board, you know. One of the things, and I don't know if you experienced this, but if you look back at the 80s with the advent of preamping and diversifying into different configurations of pickups, especially on the bass guitar, from combinations of single coil and split pickups and humbuckers, manufacturers started to create lesser quality instruments, not electronics, but the woods. And that's another thing. If they're being built overseas, they might not have, if it's a small country, they might not have access to as much wood as we have here in the United States. This is a huge country. You can go to different forests and find all these different, types of woods,
Exactly. It's actually an observation I've made about stuff right now that I've been having some problems with some of the guitars that have come to me for review and things from overseas. And while I like the imports, I think they're good craftsmanship. I'm getting a lot of fret sprout, like the frets are popping out the sides, things like that. Or I'm getting maple neck through basses that feel like they weigh an ounce. And I'm going, the wood isn't dry. It's all really young. It's not aged. And it starts to, you can tell, you can feel it, You've been to NAMM show many times, haven't you?
I've experienced that with certain foreign OEMs that now, because as let's say a brand hires this company to build their version of a price point. Like they'll have their made in the US and then made in somewhere else. And then for the beginners, made in Asia, let's say, and I pick up those instruments and I go, sticky, there's sap coming through the neck. The wood's not ready. It's not cured. This one thing, okay, this bass, 1959. 1959, they were not going through the issues of deforestation as we've been going through in modern times, right? So this wood is like choice wood. Choice wood was the standard. Fender, Gibson, any of these companies, anybody that built an instrument back in the 50s or up until like the 60s, right? Choice woods, it guaranteed, and plus it's been sealed with this kind of lacquer. I forgot the name of it. That is not legal. Yeah, it's not legal to apply anymore. So it's thicker. What is it? Nitro? Yeah.
For cellulose. Yeah.
Exactly. So now you're in addition to that, you're getting this other plus that this lacquer is not available anymore. The neck really breathes, and it makes such a difference in all the fundamentals that you hear. All the harmonics are bigger tone because you got bigger harmonics being triggered with your pick or your fingers, and but then again, you have to pay the price for an instrument like that. But at the end of the day, it's really worth it if that's what you're looking for. So what happens is the companies that you're talking about, and I find this mostly in the bass, they compensate it with more electronics. If you cannot get a certain tone out of that bass organically or passive, then we got this, just put it on active and dial it in, But then again, once you play it, you're not going to there's something about a bass like the one I was just showing you, you feel it in your hands. That vibration is right here on the fretboard. And it's like, it's right there in your hands. It's not just like you don't feel it, but it's coming out. It's like a simulation. No, it's not. It's the real deal,
Definitely. Yeah, it's even like you can see I've got like two Peaveys in the back there, but I've got the original TL that I think was like basically the generation after your first signature Peavey, and it's I tell guys about them all the time. You can find them fairly cheap, but it's the American crafted maple body sides, maple neck through, that really ebony neck like your signature head. Like they feel and play different.
It's really interesting what you just mentioned because it's all perception. You can grab any, I play my Cirrus basses all the time. I got them around my room. They have a specific tone.
Yeah.
And I'm at fault for that. And when I get to that era, I'll okay. But what happened is I have a 6-string that I have strung like a guitar with bass strings, the 105 to 45, and then the B and the high E is 32 and 26 gauge. That's the bass that I have right next to me on my sofa. So every morning, every night, I'm playing that bass. They're magnificent instruments. They're the biggest bargain that you can get right now, only because of the perception of the brand Peavey.
Yep, exactly.
If you can actually put your hands on one of those, you go, whoa, this is really good. How much is it? Really? You're kidding.
They're starting to climb, though.
Yeah.
I've seen the Cirrus are starting to cap 2,000 used now. It's getting crazy. People are finding out.
Yes, they're finding out. And yeah, and you're talking about the ones made at the custom shop.
Yeah, the ones in Meridian.
In Meridian, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, okay, so we haven't gotten there yet. We're almost there. We're almost there. Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? Okay.
Nope, all set. We're good.
Okay, you're all set. Okay. Okay. So yeah, just to finish off the whole thing with the with my Washburn. So, usually things happen at the NAMM show, especially if you're working with an OEM, which Washburn was working with at the time. I could talk to Greg Bennett and say this and this and that about my signature bass, but then he would have to talk to the people in Korea or wait to make a trip to Korea to get things done. So here I am, I'm playing my signature bass on the Condition Critical tour, which is like late summer until November, December or January of '85. So during that period, I went to the NAMM show. And that's when they came out with the production models. And I pick one up and I go, this is not like my bass. And they go, yeah, it's the production model and blah, blah, blah. I'm going, I can't play this. I can't. I can't put my name on this. This is horrible. So he goes, well, you know what? Yeah, we're thinking about changing factories. We'll give us a few months and we're gonna switch factories and hopefully we can fix it.
Yeah.
So back in the day, well, they still do. They have two NAMMs, winter and summer NAMM. So in summer NAMM in New Orleans, that same year, 6 months later, I go back and it's even worse.
Oh.
It's even, and I'm talking, okay, and just to make clear, I mean, I don't want everybody that has one of those basses in their collection to like thrash them or something like that. No, I'm talking about the difference between what they built for me to play. I thought that was what everybody was going to get. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And it was not. Mine was like a souped up, version of something. And then they're selling this sedan. They built me a Lamborghini and they're selling a Corolla. Nothing's wrong with the Corolla. It's my favorite car to rent when I go on the road. Very reliable, but it's not what my vision was. It's not what I wanted to put my name on. I didn't want to be known as the guy who designed a Corolla. So well, shortly after that, in '85, we parted ways. So one day, at a music store, and by then, Duran Duran was like, 86. This is right before Whitesnake.
Yeah.
They were like the hot band. I'm going like, I really like John Taylor. He's got really good action, really good tone. Let me check it out. So I pick up an Aria Pro 2 off the wall. LA, West LA Music. All right.
Yeah.
In Santa Monica.
I remember
there. Yeah. And I go, wow, this is pretty cool. So I contact them and they send me a bass. And I started playing it. This is before I joined Whitesnake. And I had already established a relationship with Alembic. So I told them, listen, can I send this bass that you sent me over to Alembic and have it, do you mind if I put some Alembic pickups and preamp in it? So that's how I started playing the Aria Pro. Wow. Right? But it had Alembic. I also had some Bartolinis put in there. I mean, I'm still friends. I'm working with Bill and his family on these. They're just I couldn't go wrong. It's
Mhm.
either Alembic or Bartolini,
Yeah.
Ferrari, Lamborghini. It's all the same. Can't go wrong with that. So it's like now I joined Whitesnake, and I got these souped up Aria basses, and I'm like rocking it. But the neck was always a little chunky for me. It had more of that baseball bat feel to it. Not as fine as the Spectre. The Spectre has a little bit of that scoop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very thin. It's almost like a jazz and a Gibson put together, the profile in the back,
I always say it's deeper instead of wider.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Mhm.
And so it works for me, for that. It balances out. It's not too thick. And, like the Aria was a little bit too thick for me. Okay. So I by then I have been using the Peavey amplifiers, all this time. And we have been working on different things,
Yeah.
For many years, they tried to build a competition for the Ampeg SVT,
Okay.
the A10. That was kind of like things that hardly Peavey wanted to accomplish. Okay. But so it's up until the moment I'm playing modular, the same backline that I was using with Quiet Riot, I started using with Whitesnake in the '87 tour. A little side note on that. I want to give you as much background to the basses in my life. Right before I joined Whitesnake, I was hanging with Bernie Rico, DC Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Rudy, I would love it if you play one of my basses. Let's build a signature model. And I said, it will be my honor. So Bernie and we got together and we come up with a bass that you can actually watch me. Well, it's on the video. And it's not even a song that I played on the record. Here I Go Again.
Really?
The red, that is a BC Rich with, I believe, a Bartolini, either a Bartolini or an Alembic pickup, single soap bar pickup in the middle. That's a BC Rich. And there's only one of that one. So I gave it back to Bernie and said, you know what? It just doesn't fit the sound of Whitesnake. The Arias did, but not this BC Rich. So I gave it back to him, and somebody has it out there. So
yeah, now that's going to be another one people are searching for.
It's the same bass that I use on Here I Go Again. Okay, so fast forward, and I get so we're on tour with Whitesnake again. Whitesnake becomes really big, which means Rudy Sarzo from Whitesnake plays. So you start getting these calls,
Yeah.
And one of them was from Hartley. Hartley sends his jet to pick us up on tour, pick us, meaning Adrian Vanderberg and me, on a day off. And so we go to Meridian, we hang out with him, and we're sitting in his pool area with him and Melia. Did you ever meet Melia, Peavey Hartley's? She was, Peavey as a brand was successful because of that couple.
Oh. Okay.
Hartley was the tinkerer, the guy in the garage. That's how Peavey was built. He was always building things, creative. Melia was the other side of the brain. She was marketing, promotion, getting things together. She drums. She was responsible for bringing in drums and keyboards, high technology keyboards. Those keyboards were way ahead of their time. The Peavey keyboards. Oh my God, the technology that they were incorporating into the instruments was phenomenal. They had the first factory building guitars with computerized. They have machines building the instruments by computer.
Huh.
Each one was perfect in the custom shop. And but anyway, so Hartley goes to Adrian and me, and he goes, my dream really is to be known as a guitar company. How would you guys like to have your own signature model? And of course, Adrian came out with his has like the Swan, is like some reverse headstock, You know, really
Yeah.
beautiful instrument. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautifully designed. Yeah, and mine is the one that you were reviewing,
Uh-huh.
you know, in the video.
Mhm.
And but there's a trajectory to that. What I wanted now, I know better. Now I know better from my previous design, which was the crazy Washburn, you know, bass. Now I say, okay, let's build something that again you would see somebody in a wedding band play, you know, a traditional instrument. And I started taking elements of what I really liked about previous basses that I own, like the jazz bass, that type of a slim light neck, but this time 24 fret. Body styling, a lighter version than the Aria, but kind of like with the same profile. Neck through the body.
Mhm.
You know, we had all these points I brought in with me on one of the trips because it took a year to finalize the final instrument with what it was, the design of it. I mean, they were working on it every single day, but there was a lot of little things, and there were really no compromises because they needed to commit at a price point, like a few dollars under $1,000,
Okay.
a $1,500 bass at under a few $1,000, a few, you know, like $950
Mhm.
retail, which meant that wholesale it would be like around $475,
Gotcha.
and they had to make a profit on that. They had to give me a royalty on it, and so you know there was a lot of things that we considering. How can we bring it in at this certain price with no compromises? They has to be exactly the same instrument that I play on stage.
Mhm.
You know, no
Yeah.
surprises.
No.
No particle wood, you know, it's all American wood, you know. And yeah, Peavey's really good about the woods, you know. And so they came up with that instrument. Electronic wise, since I was already using Bartolini's and Alembics, at that point I started becoming a fan of EMGs pickups. I said, ooh, there's a certain tonal quality to these that, you know, maybe being some is a PJ configuration, some are just, you know, split pickup configurations, but there's a certain tone that is like, you know, especially for Whitesnake was my first band when I actually played with two guitar players.
Mhm.
So I really had to change my tone to accommodate the frequencies and still be able to like be understood with all this information going on pretty close to my range. Because I got to tell you, at that time, Vivian Campbell had a Bradshaw system,
Mhm.
and his sound, he didn't need a bass player in the band. It was huge. So he was on my side of the stage, and it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to shelve my frequency to accommodate his sound, so we don't, you know, we don't conflict. We don't get into each other's frequencies.
Such an important thing too, and something I've talked about. That's so great that you kind of got moving from a one guitar to a two guitar situation, having to, it's almost like the bass player glides in the holes that the others leave, and that you recognized it and you were kind of like, okay, you kind of, you have to drift and dodge around where they are to make sure you're heard and you're not doubling up frequencies.
Well, it's really interesting also. It's becoming aware of a tonal strategy, meaning,
Love it.
meaning that if you listen to records from the 70s, first of all, there were records, which meant that when they're being mastered, you cannot have too much information per side, because otherwise the grooves would be too close, which meant that every time there would be too deep of a bass signal, make the needle skip. So, you know, and I mean, I can, right now I'm playing with the Guess Who, which is started in the 60s. If we're talking about, and I'm aware of this because I know how different it sounds if I play too many open E's rather than E on the A string, you know, was that 7th fret, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, A on the E string, 5th fret, that's as low usually that on the records they will go. Because anything below that, it will create that jumping of the needles because they're trying to fit as much music as possible on one side, which is maybe tops used to be 20 minutes to keep it at a preferable, consistent mastering level and EQ.
Yeah.
You know, with all the other records in the market and on the radio. That's why everything sounds so melodic and so beautiful. And it's not all any of that going down, tuned down to B on a 5-string bass. No. You know, so when I started playing with Whitesnake, we were doing a lot of the 70s stuff in addition to songs from the 87 record. So sonically, it was like, not only am I going to change my tone, I'm going to change my areas where I play. So it doesn't go too low.
Yeah.
To add to the rumble. And we're playing arenas. That's another thing. If you're playing a club or if you're playing a theater, you know, the sound that you get is, if you get a good tone on stage, well, probably the first 20 or 30 rows are going to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays, people are using emulators and, you know, and they're just plugged into the ears, you know, but not 35 years ago.
Sure.
You know, so I had to take all of that into consideration. So anyway, so going back to the pickups, Bartolini's, EMGs, and Alembic, we put them through the scope, and we found the qualities that I was looking for. You know, like the mid range of the EMG. Okay, let's go for that. But that's the frequency. Then we're looking at the beautiful low end of the Alembic, warm. And then you got the high end, shiny of the Bartolini's. And so that pickup on that is an outcome of putting together all of those frequencies and saying, okay, this is what we're going for. And then I believe the preamp, because again, they couldn't afford to create a new preamp. I believe it's from a Dynabase, which actually complemented that pickup really nicely.
Yeah, that was the Dynabase circuit. That was pretty much in that. I think almost any active preamp at that time before they hit the Cirrus, that was the one that went in there. The same 3-band circuit.
Okay, so fast forward to 1997, because you know from let's say from 92 they discontinued that bass, my signature model. They gave me an option of a bass with Koa called the RSB. Right?
Those, yeah.
And I played it and I went, it's not the same. And it was bolt-on too.
Okay.
So I went, you know, thank you, but I think it's about time, you know. So I asked him to, that was the end, you know. But what they did is they took a lot of the research, R&D into my signature model, and they put it into the Cirrus.
Right.
So in 1997, you know, I'm still friends working with Peavey in other areas, you know. So 97 NAMM show, I walk in and I see the Cirrus and I pick it up and I play it and I went, this is even better than my signature model. So I asked Mike Powers. I don't know if you ever met Mike Powers. He was the master luthier. We have people like Jim Vicola. He's one of the master luthiers at Gibson today, also working at Peavey. We have so many great, you know, designers of instrument. Tim Litchfield was another one. But Mike was the main guy who later was taken over to China to oversee the manufacturing of all of the Chinese production of Peavey products, because they needed one person to go every single, make, you know, for quality control. But I started playing that Peavey. I still have it. The original tan color. That became my main bass, and And then they made a signature model for me. That's the one that it has the snake eyes.
Yeah.
The red one. I got it somewhere. Yeah. Okay. But anyways, I love the Cirrus basses. And I think it's official. I'm not sure, but I've heard rumblings that they were being manufactured in Europe now.
Really?
Yeah.
I know, I think right now they're either Korean or Indonesian. I'm not sure where they are currently, but yeah, I hadn't heard anything about them moving manufacturing.
Yeah. Yeah. They might be making that announcement really soon. I mean, I haven't seen any of them. It's just like rumors in the background, you know. So, but as far as the design go, oh yeah, and here's the payoff, right? So the reason why I started playing arias was because of John Taylor. Then I create this signature model bass, then which becomes a Cirrus. John Taylor started playing the Cirrus, right? So I told his personal tech the whole story, that probably the reason why he feels so comfortable with the Cirrus is because it's a cousin of the Aria that he was playing.
That's hilarious.
You know how the full circle. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, a couple of questions then. As far as, because I haven't gotten to try the 4-string Cirrus or your signature from that series, but yeah, I'm familiar with the original. Is there differences in the neck from your original to the 4-string Cirrus?
You mean from the Cirrus to Cirrus? It's exactly
no, from the original, your first Peavey signature.
No, yeah. Once it was a Cirrus, it became a Cirrus. All Cirrus's necks are exactly the same. I think mine was more of a cosmetic. I didn't want to change it. It was kind of like the natural evolution of my bass into becoming this. Now, one big difference between the Cirrus and my bass is ebony.
Okay.
And every one of them, my signature models that I come across on the road, people bring them over to show me, the neck's still perfect.
Yeah.
Fretboard still perfect. It's just like Cirrus's are Pal Ferro.
Yeah.
Which has, again, and I gotta tell you, even before it became PC to be green with manufacturing, it wasn't just being green. In addition to being green, it's accessibility of woods.
Sure.
We knew that it was becoming an issue. At one point, on the last series that I was working with Mike Powers, rest in peace, we decided, okay, he told me, listen, we're closing the custom shop in Meridian. We're moving operations completely to China. And that was like, it just broke my heart, you know?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I still want to work with you guys. You guys are family. But let's think this over. How can we make this out of sustainable woods? Sustainable, meaning that there will not be a footprint to have to ship the wood over to China and then ship it back to the US or whatever countries, right? Let's find some woods in China, which is kind of hard. And so we started like racking our brain. This is that NAMM show, right? And we go like, oh, bamboo grows wild. It's as sustainable as it gets. It's like weeds. So he said, we'll give it a shot. So he made me a Cirrus full out of bamboo completely. Again, to create bamboo, you have to compress the wood. It's got more glue than the average particle board. And it weighs about 15 pounds.
Oh.
Yeah. I have it.
Worlds.
I have it in storage. So we go, Mike, we're almost there. Okay. How about if we chamber the sides to diminish the weight a bit? So he goes, I'll get back to you. So he chambers the sides. By then, we're talking about 2 or 3 years later, because every time it was like we meet at NAMM show, we talk, gets back to me a couple of months later with ideas, and then it's the next NAMM.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings this bass with the chamber sides, and he goes, "This is much lighter." And I go, "Yeah, it's great." And he goes, "Costs a lot of money to chamber this." So it's like, by then I was like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" He goes, "Listen, we just opened up a factory in Indonesia. Give me a couple of months. I'm working with them, and I'm gonna send you a Cirrus." Actually, he sent me the bass from Indonesia, and what really excited me with that was that the price point was gonna be really competitive with everybody else. Let's say if it's a midline, we were going to be able to deliver a pro instrument with midline pricing, just because it was being built in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So I go, wow, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great, plays great. Let's go. So months pass, and I've been, now I'm in contact with my people in there.
Mm-hmm.
Just to protect the innocent. I'm not going to mention names or even departments or anything, right? I'm just going to say what happened. So this happened at the 50th anniversary of Peavey at NAMM show, right?
Okay.
So I run to one of my reps and I go, "Has my bassist left Indonesia yet?"
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Yes, they're on the water. They're on the way here." And I go, "Great." Then I run into another guy. I was doing a performance that evening with Blue Oyster Cult as a celebration of Peavey Electronics. It was a big party, 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. So as I'm walking on stage, another executive comes by and he goes, "Hey, did so-and-so tell you about what happened to your basses?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, they're on the way here, they're on the water. And he says, "No. The company that was building the bases, they were defrauding taxes in Indonesia. So they shut down the factory and all your instruments are on the dock. Sealed. They were confiscated by the government."
Oh, God.
So I go, "Oh my God." Okay. Now this is no reflection on any individual or any or the brand itself. I mean, I love Peaveys. I play Peaveys. Like I mentioned, I got a room full of Peaveys, along with my Fenders and Spectres and you name it. It just has to do with, things happen. I think that as soon as manufacturing left the US, you kind of lose control of the destiny of if you have a signature model or if you're running the company, because you're dealing with so many elements. You're dealing with politics, you're dealing with environmental agencies, you're dealing with crazy stuff. You're dealing with Indonesia, Malaysia, all these countries are known for extreme weather conditions, which means that if you build an instrument overseas, you put it in the water, by the time it gets to your final destination, it's going to be a lot of quality control because the instrument has to adapt to whatever environment it happens to be in at that moment. Exactly. And amplifiers, they act a little bit different because they're not susceptible to environmental changes as much as musical instruments are.
That's funny when a lot of the guys on the channel ask like my advice on, what do you think of this new bass? What would you do? What do you do? And I go, look for a used one, because it's already been through hell and you know what it's going to do. So try and find it used. And it's what that bass you were going to buy new is going to be in 6 months. So
exactly. It's almost like buying a brand new car or something slightly used or leased. Buy something that's already, because once it goes out the dealership lot. That's it. That's it. It loses its value. But instruments, we're dealing with organic elements. The wood, especially the wood, so important. you know the history, like this one. This one is a 59. It was the first year that they used slapboard rosewood, slapboard fretboard.
Huh.
Yeah, on Fender basses. This is what happened. Fender basses, since they were manufactured and distributed basically in this region,
Mm-hmm.
distribution was completely different back, 70 years ago than it is today, So these were regional instruments, like let's say Gibson, Gretsch. They had the Eastern market because they were manufactured over there,
Mm-hmm.
And these basses were manufactured here. Now, once musicians started listening to, wow, those records, those American records, what instruments that they using? Oh, that's a Fender bass. Oh, I want one. So there's a guy in England.
Mm-hmm.
In this late 50s or 60s, orders one of these, right? So by the time he gets to the shop, the neck is all warped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually music shops back in the day, they sold televisions, they sold everything, and then they had a little section for musical instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew about, how to work on the neck, how to fix that, right? So they had to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And that's when we started getting into necks like these, rather than just having a straight maple neck, a straight meaning that that's all there is. There's a maple neck that by the time it gets to England,
Mm-hmm.
it's completely warped with nobody knowing how to fix this problem here.
Yeah. Man, it's changed. It's kind of funny in a way that it's changed so much and the instruments have evolved, but the same things keep coming back to haunt us. It's like the new imports are having the same things, the same issues getting here as the ones going from California to London in the early days. You can't defeat some things. They're just, you can't get around them, and the earth's going to have its way with it. So
Absolutely. I mean, Mother Nature is going to reclaim what has been taken off the ground.
Yep.
You know?
I agree. I take your action.
That's right. That's right. I gotta say something else about Cirrus instruments. The truss rod system is like nothing I've ever experienced before. I've done shows that I can go from LA, bring it on board, stick it on the overhead, go to Russia, get off the plane, take it on stage, and it's perfect.
Wow.
Not a single bow, nothing. It's as straight as it gets. I can't even recall working on a Cirrus neck, having to work on it at all. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's become my mission. I'm on the hunt now for one more of your original 4 strings and your Cirrus 4. Got my feelers out there trying to see if I can find a pair.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find them because, it's, again, you're talking about an era that it's not going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
That those were built at the custom shop in Merida, Mississippi at a certain time with certain luthiers, like Jim DeCola was there. Tim is still at Peavey, but Jim DeCola is at Gibson, and Mike Powers, he passed on, so it's pretty much, those are like end of an era instruments that will never be exactly replicated. I mean, if it does happen with the new factory that they're working with in Europe, then you're going to see a return to really high quality Cirrus basses.
That's interesting, and there's another little loop there. One of my favorite places that I see things come out of, I actually had a lot of respect for Spectre's Euro factory, the one in the Czech Republic. I'm wondering if that's where Peavey's going to be going to.
I have no idea. I mean, there's so many factories out there, But I gotta tell you, the Spectre factory where they make my signature bass. You mind if I grab it really quick?
Of course.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Speaking of signature basses, I also grabbed my acoustic sawtooth signature bass.
Nice.
But this one I just happened to be at the 2019 NAMM show. Because obviously there was not one this past year, and I had gone to the Fishman booth just to say hello because I work with them. They make the preamps for my acoustic bass that I'm going to show you after this one. And so I'm talking, you know, Ken Susi, which is one of the reps there, and Greg Lanier, Gary Lanier. And so I see this bass on the wall. And I go, oh, what is this? It's a Spectre, of course, you know. And so I plug it in. And are you familiar with these Fluence pickups?
Yeah, I have a set in a bass from Spectre guitar.
Yeah.
You want?
I couldn't believe the response, how quick, because I could hear it, the response is what you play, it immediately comes out, the reproduction of it, you know, there's no lag. And then all the possibilities that I could get out of these pickups and the preamp and go active, passive, you know, and it's really quick. And they're using, this bass was not supposed to exist. This was kind of like a mistake at the factory that they built this with the special wood. It's a lighter wood.
Really?
And for stage, it's perfect. It feels amazing because, you know, I already have, you know, the regular Euros, which are a little bit denser in wood. And they sound great, but that's that sound. And every time that, this is my second signature model with Spectre, I always look for features that are not part of bases that they offer already. Because what's the point? you know, so I'm always looking for something cutting edge. And so these Fishmen really fit the bill. Plus the fact that they have the EQ is part of the system. And I haven't installed it on this bass yet, but there's also a USB charge for that replaces the 9 volt. And just, you know, it's an incredibly fast, forward thinking company with electronics. And yeah, I'm super happy with this one.
Now, is that set the standard one that they have, or have they made a different set for you specifically?
Set? You mean the pickups?
Yeah.
No, yeah. This just as of right now, this is just a standard one.
Okay.
Because you know we're trying to incorporate it into, you know, as far as marketing, we didn't want to come up with something too radical.
Got it.
It's a combination of the wood, the pickups and the custom color, and I love it. It's just amazing. It's incredibly the diversity of tones that you can get from it is just unbelievable. It plays great. I love it. It's a wonderful bass.
I've been a Spectre for a long time. I've owned a couple, and they're all just world-class instruments, definitely.
Absolutely. And the one that I had, my previous model with them, with the Sims pickups, well, what I asked them to do was to curve it more, to have access to the 24 frets. But at the factory, what they did is they moved the sides down. So they moved the side enough. So what happens is they added extra body down here.
Got it. Okay.
And it gave it a different tone. I must say that, because now you got more wood to work with, more tone, more mass at the bridge to vibrate.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now let me grab the acoustic bass.
Sure.
And this is why I go wireless with my bass.
Yeah, exactly.
I am that guy that I see a chord and I go, oh, I'm going to step on it, and I do step on it and I trip.
Nope. I'm the same way.
Okay, here it is. 24 frets. Have you ever had the chance to check one of these out?
I haven't. That's new to me.
Yeah, we like I was mentioning, it's got the Fishman preamp right here. Yeah. And what we did is we designed this from the bottom up completely. This is it's a new mold. It's not like we took a mold that the factory had and say, okay, let's build a bass and start with this. No, this is a completely different. all from scratch, done. And again, it's, you know, I love the.
I don't think I've ever seen an acoustic bass that had that kind of reach on it to the upper.
But yeah, it's completed 24 frets, really nice thick. It's all maple.
Wow.
With the binding, everything, it's got this little hole, so you can hear yourself playing.
Oh,
Right?
it's interesting. Yeah, it looked like a control cavity at first. I didn't realize that was a resonation thing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's got a beautiful, beautiful neck. One of the things that I really wanted to accomplish with this design was, you know, usually when, let's say you're doing a regular rock set and somebody in the middle goes, oh, now we're going to do the unplugged section.
Mm-hmm.
You grab your acoustic bass and you're like, oh God, wait a minute. Let me get the feel for this, because it just doesn't feel like an electric bass.
Yeah, yeah.
So this one, we wanted to rectify that and make sure that the tension was exactly like an electric bass as far as the tension goes.
Okay.
You know? Yeah. So that's one of the features, and it's an incredible bass. I love it. It's got great reviews from the from everybody that's bought one, and it's of course electric acoustic right here.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. And the reason why we picked the Fishman is because what we really wanted to accomplish was to get the right the resonance of the bass, you know, amplified by the preamp. So what you hear acoustically is exactly what it sounds like plugged in.
right.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's a gorgeous instrument, man.
Boy, it just feels great, and it's really well priced too. It's not something that is out of reach, you know, from anybody.
Very cool, man. And that's already out on the market, right?
Oh yeah, it's been out for about a year now. Yeah.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
So that's wow.
So, do you have any questions?
The only thing I can think of is on your signature Spectre is especially the neck. Is that pretty much the same specs as their standard series NS, or did they adapt it for you?
No, it's standard. It's standard. I think there's other profiles, neck profiles for Spectre. I believe the what's his name from Judas Priest?
Ian Hill.
Ian Hill. I have one of those. Actually, I turned that one into a fretless. It sounds unbelievable. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to Norman's here in the Valley in LA.
Yeah.
And they worked on it, removed the frets, and sounds wonderful. And I also have a fretless version of this one.
Oh.
This one also comes fretless and right and left-handed available. Yeah, for lefties and righties. Yeah, and Doug Wimbish has a different profile too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you know, another profile really. No, I don't think, because they other signature models offer that already. So I didn't want to go into their territory with what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried. I haven't had the Ian Hill, but I tried the Wimbish, and that one was it was very much more jazz-like, almost like that kind of narrower nut thing. And it was funny. I used Spectres for so long, it was kind of weird to play one that didn't feel like what I was used to. It's like I see a Spectre, but I don't feel one. It was a little strange.
Yeah,
man, that's what an arc, man. That's yeah, this is just a treasure trove of info, man. You've been so generous with.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I see you doing this all the time. You know, you put your heart and soul into it. So I just wanted to pour as much as more heart and soul into it too.
No, that's
out of gratitude to what you're doing. Yeah.
With generosity, and that's truly rare. So
plus, let's face it, we love basses.
Yeah, we do. It's nerd fest.
Yeah, it's a total nerd fest, you know.
So I think we've pretty well covered the arc and everything. So what I'd like to do, if we can, we'll wrap up this regular segment for the channel, and then some of the fans of the channel had a specific question for you.
Let's go for it.
And yeah, so signing off on the main channel. Thanks so much to Rudy. This is an amazing treasure trove here. And you want to catch the next set, head on over to the Patreon channel, and we're going to answer that question there.
So thanks for enjoying this session with me and Rudy Sarzo. Rudy obviously put out an incredible amount of information, and I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope that you enjoyed watching. If you'd like the extended patron part of it, links down below where Rudy goes in and talks about what he feels were the crucial elements to him developing his career, and actually gets into some life philosophy and things that he feels really guided him in the decision making that he did and how he handles himself personally and in his career. And I think it's really valuable information. So links down below to Patreon and Subscribe Star if you want to hit the pages and get those two. And again, thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.